Hey everybody, what's up? MMAtoronto.ca here with my UFC 125 predictions. I just want to touch note on UFC 124. I was at that event. It was amazing. Like I said before, it didn't look so great on paper, star-wise, but it really delivered. It was very exciting to be at. The George St. Pierre fight was pretty good live, but when I went back to watch it on video, you know what? It wasn't really that exciting of a fight. I mean, it was just a one-way beatdown, jabs, kicks, not very many variations of strikes thrown on GSP's part. And the fans voted that fight of the night, which was absolutely ridiculous. Sean Pearson versus Matt Riddle was definitely the fight of the night. It was so amazing to be there live and witness that. So congratulations, Sean. I feel bad for picking Riddle in my last predictions, but congrats, buddy. Okay, so as usual, I'm going to hit up the main card for the event, and I'll post the undercard picks in the description. Alright, so let's start the night out with Thiago Silva versus Brandon Vera. Thiago Silva, his last fight was a knockout victory over Keith Jardine, who, let's face it, wasn't exactly UFC caliber the last 5-6 fights of his career. And you know, since then, Keith Jardine's gone on to win like one fight overseas in the middle of nowhere. And then he had a decision loss to Rashad Evans. But in that fight, a lot of people didn't understand is that he had a really bad back injury going into that fight, and he tried to pull out of it, but the UFC begged him not to pull out of it because the card was already pretty bad, and they didn't want to lose their main event. So he had a big disadvantage going into that fight, and Rashad, you know, pretty much barely pulled that one out. Anyway, his record is 14-2. He's a black belt in BJJ. He has very good Muay Thai, and he trains out of the American top team. He has a really good mount, top ground game. He has pretty good hands, striking-wise too. But something I notice about Thiago is his head movement is far too predictable. He just comes in like this all the time. That's all he ever does, bobs, bobs, bobs. So if someone can time that correctly and land maybe a head kick or a good punch, they could probably get him in trouble. Brandon Vera, his last two fights was a loss to Randy Couture, which, you know, any real fan who watched that fight would give that decision to Vera. I think the judges were some serious nut huggers there, giving it to Randy. No disrespect to Randy. Anyhow. And then he lost a devastating fight to John Jones, who landed some crazy elbows from the top position. Actually fractured Vera's cheekbone. So he's been out for a while. So this is his first fight in quite a while. His record is 11-5. He has a brown belt in BJJ. His Muay Thai is really good. His leg kicks are some of the best in the game. Man, when he lands his leg kicks, you hear that thud. You know, people have a misconception when a leg kick lands and they hear the slap that it's hard. Not necessarily the truth. When you hear the thud, that's when it digs deep into the bone. So his leg kicks, man, they do work. He's won fights just based on leg kicks before in the past. He trains at a Team Lloyd Irvin and Adrenaline MMA. A third loss in a row for Vera could spell the end of his career in the UFC, unless they want to keep him around for marketing ploys for a Philippines event, maybe, who knows. But he's going to be fighting for his life here. So I think this is going to be a good fight. I think there's going to be a lot of stand-up, maybe the odd takedown here and there. Vera's not known to take people down, so I think he's going to try to keep it in the stand-up. Thiago Silva should probably take it to the ground and mount Vera, who obviously, in his fight with Jones, shows that his bottom ground game isn't so great. Vera's the underdog in this fight, but I'm going to go with Brandon Vera. I think he's going to be able to pick apart Thiago Silva. I just think his striking's a little more technical. Thiago Silva's more of a power shot, kind of knockout throwing striking guy. But I think Vera's Muay Thai is a little better, and I think Brandon Vera will win this fight via second or third round TKO. He's going to really make a statement in this fight and stay in the UFC. Okay, moving along. Chris Leben versus Brian Stann. Everyone knows, you know, Chris Leben won the 2 fights in the span of 2 weeks versus Akiyama and Aaron Simpson, both in great fashion. He's had some recent personal problems with the DUI, so I don't know where his head's at. I hope it's straight coming into this fight, because I want to see a good Chris Leben, because he's a very exciting fighter. So his record is 25-6. He doesn't really hold any significant belts in any kind of martial arts. But his style is, he's a gamer. He goes to fight, he goes to win, he goes to entertain, and he's not afraid to take punches, man. This guy can take shots from anyone other than Anderson Silva. So the fans love him, he's got a great chin, and he trains out of Team Quest, which is a pretty good team. Brian Stann, his last fight was a loss to Phil Davis. Or no, 2 fights ago he lost to Phil Davis, who's a rising star in the UFC right now. And then he won against Mike Macenzio. His record is 9-3. He's a former WEC champion. He trains out of the Greg Jackson's camp. Now, I'm sure Greg Jackson is probably the best at making game plans for people that are good for their acquired, like their skill set. So I think Jackson's going to really take all Brian Stann's strengths and try to use it in this fight and to really implement a good game plan against Levin. If I was Brian Stann, I'd be trying to take that fight down to the ground at the initial stare down, man, because you don't want to stand with Chris. Everyone says, oh, they'll stand and bang, but man, that doesn't work out good for you. So, in this fight, I don't know. I'd really like to know where Chris Levin's headed at. It's hard to make this pick, man, but I'm going to go with Chris Levin via TKO. Probably a late one, because I think Brian Stann will be able to have a good strategy, but eventually he's just going to get caught with one of those punches, I think. So, yeah, Chris Levin, TKO. All right, then we got Nate Diaz versus Dong Young Kim. Diaz's last 2 fights were against Rory Markham, where he won, and a really good fight versus Marcus Davis, where he choked Marcus unconscious. That was, I believe that was fight of the night too, man. They stood up, traded a lot of great strikes. Diaz rocked Davis and just grabbed him and choked him right unconscious. His record is 13-5. He has a brown belt in BJJ. I would have thought he was black, but he has a brown belt. He has a very unique style of boxing that resembles his older brother, Nick Diaz. Now, he doesn't really throw the bombs. What he likes to do is he likes to pick away and peck at you and just break your will and just land shots. He lands so many that it does a lot of damage, and it really is disheartening to the fighter who's trying to fight with him, because he's just tapping you, but the damage he does is pretty significant. He trains out of the Cesar Gracie Academy. Dong Young Kim, last 2 fights were a win over TJ Grant and Amir Sadallah. He is a 4th-degree black belt in judo. Some serious shit. His record is 13-0, but back at UFC 94, he lost a split decision to Caro Parisian. That later got overturned because Caro, I think, was using banned painkillers or something along those lines. Who knows what he's using. So he trains out of CMA in Korea. He's pretty well-rounded. He's a pretty strong guy. I'm going to go with Diaz in this fight for sure. I think Diaz will just be the much more technical striker. He's good. He's really good on his back. He's very good at getting triangles. So if Kim takes him to the ground, which he's very capable of doing, I think Diaz will be in a pretty good position. So I think Diaz will probably win this fight via submission. I think he'll be on his back quite a bit, and he'll look for something, probably a Kimura or a triangle. So I'm going to go with Nate Diaz via submission. All right, we got Clay Guida versus Takanori Gomi, the Fireball Kid. Man, this is going to be a really good fight. All week I've been thinking about this fight. I'm going back and forth. I'm on the fence. I don't know who I'm going to pick. I probably won't know until after I read off this sheet. Anyhow, Guida's last 2 fights were a win over Shannon Gurgity and Rafael Dos Anjos. His record is 27-11, but I don't think he's ever been in boring. He's never been in a boring fight. He'll always be a fan favorite, and he'd probably have to sleep with Dana White's wife to get cut. Let's be honest, man. This guy will never get cut. I don't care if he goes on a 5-fight losing streak. He currently trains out of Team Jackson, which I think is good for him because, Clay, he'll take you down and pound you for like 3 rounds, this, that, and that. He hasn't been known to finish too often, but he's still an exciting fighter. I think he's looked pretty good since going to Team Jackson. So then we got Gomi. His last 2 fights were his debut against Kenny Florian, where he didn't really seem himself. He seemed to get those octagon jitters. Might not have been ready for the American style of MMA, so he lost a decision there. But then in his next fight, he knocked Tyson Griffin. He knocked Tyson Griffin out, man. Of course, Tyson Griffin gets up, complains, whatever. He always does that. He's a poor sport. But yeah, that was very shocking because Griffin's never been knocked out. So I became a big Gomi fan after that fight. And He's a Japanese legend. His record is 32-6, and he fights out of American Kickboxing Academy since coming to the UFC. Like I said, this whole week I've been on the fence. I was thinking earlier that Gomi would probably knock out Guida. But then I was thinking, you know what? Gomi's cardio's been questionable in the past because he's always trying to go out with that reckless, knock a guy's head off style with one strike. And Guida, he's got cardio. He can probably go 10 rounds, that guy. I think what Jackson's going to do is make sure Guida avoids getting that one-punch knockout from Gomi. Take him down, strike, mix it up, and just wear Gomi down. I'm going to pick Guida via decision for that fight. Alright, main event, Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard. This is another fight I've been on the fence about. I really like Frankie Edgar. I'm not a huge fan of Gray Maynard. So sometimes I pick from emotions, I'll pick a favorite fighter, but I'm not going to do this in this fight. Anyhow, Frankie Edgar's last two fights were UFC 112 and 118. 112, he beat BJ by a decision. I think it was close. He might have won by a round or two, I think. It was really hard to score that fight. He took, there was a lot of criticism about it. People were crying foul, blah, 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 because, everyone loves BJ, including myself. But then at 118, he showed that he deserved to be wearing that belt. He totally dismantled. He schooled BJ Penn. I mean, it was unbelievable. We've never seen anyone do that since George St. Pierre at UFC 94, pretty much. So that was really amazing, and it really solidified him as one of the top, if not the best lightweight in the world. So his record is 13-1. Ironically, his only loss was to Gray Maynard. He's a purple belt in BJJ under Renzo Gracie, and he's a Division I NCAA wrestler. Okay, Gray Maynard. His last two fights were a split decision versus Nate Diaz. He also defeated Kenny Florian by decision. Now, in that fight, there was so much on the line. It was the title shot, so it wasn't all that exciting of a fight. Gray just imposed his will, his strength, with his ground and pound, his usual style. So that's what got him this title shot. He's also an NCAA Division I wrestler who trains out of Extreme Couture, obviously a very good camp. Many fans feel he's a boring fighter. Personally, I see him as the John Fitch at 155, where he will do what it takes to win without taking too many risks, and he doesn't care if he's boring. A win is a win. And you know what? I mean, this day in the UFC, with how they cut people and the money involved, you know what? In a sense, I don't blame him, although I'd like to see a little more excitement in his fights. But anyhow, I'm going to stop being a hater. I want to see Frankie win this. I really do. He's quick. He can get in and out of the pocket, strike, circle, takedown. He's got it all. But I think fight night, Gray Maynard's going to be the much bigger fighter in this. And I think what Gray Maynard's going to do is try to get him up against the cage, clinch, smother him, and bully him, just like what his nickname is. I mean, if you think about it, Randy Couture, that's his style. And this is one of his number one pupils, pretty much. So why is he not going to try the same thing? Because he's going to have the size and strength advantage for sure. So I think Gray Maynard's going to smother him against the cage, go for takedowns, do the ground and pound. I think Frankie Edgar in the first few rounds will be able to get away from that, but eventually it's going to wear on him. And unfortunately, I think Gray Maynard's going to win this fight and become the new lightweight champion by decision. I don't see Frankie getting stopped. That kid he don't quit, man. So there's my picks. Make a comment, agree, disagree, say whatever you want. And see you for UFC 126. Enjoy the fights, everybody.